This video is brought to you by Bespoke Post. Stick around to hear more about their special offer for the entire Upper Echelon community. Also, limited edition merchandise, only available for another 6 days, so grab one if you want before the holidays. Who remembers the original PlayStation? YouTube gives me a pretty comprehensive spread of analytics on who watches these videos, so I know for a fact that most of you are men ages 18 to 45, which means a lot of you probably remember the original PlayStation, or at least the original Xbox. For me, it was PlayStation, then PlayStation 2, then Xbox 360, then PS4, then Xbox One. I still haven't actually gotten a current generation console myself because, I don't know, I just don't see a reason yet, but that's the history of my console ownership as far back as it goes. One of the games I played the most was Andretti Racing on the original PlayStation, right in the background right now. Funnily enough, my favorite game was published by Electronic Arts, if you can believe that. And for today, I'd like to examine how the world of video games, at large, over the past 25 or so years, has completely changed. For clarity, not all video games currently fall prey to this. However, a larger than ever cross-section of them do, which has turned the space from a hobby-driven world of pure entertainment to a psychological maze of extremely predatory tactics. It's not the first time I've talked about this, nor am I the first person who has even done so, but as the trend continues relatively unchecked, it seems like as good a time as any to once again examine where mainstream gaming has come from, where it currently is, and where it appears to be going. Without further ado, let's get started. The early 2000s, in my opinion, were the golden years of gaming. Call it nostalgia, call it rose-tinted glasses, I don't care, because it's true. Video games were objectively superior before the age of dynamic difficulty, psychological manipulation, and predatory monetization. Now, to be clear, once again, this is not true of the entire industry. However, the number of companies who actively engage in these practices over the past 15 to 20 years has only ever grown. And when mainstream publishers are responsible for a rapidly increasing market share of popular game releases, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. Certain titles like Elden Ring or God of War, as a couple of examples, still conform to what seems like a dying business model. Make a game, make it good, release it, make some money. And those games are incredibly successful as a result because people crave what used to be. Straightforward, fair, well understood, and commonly accepted. However, lately, an ever-growing cross-section of video games have become something else entirely. Alright, before going further, let's talk about today's video sponsor, which is Bespoke Post. This might actually be the perfect sponsor for the channel, and when I say perfect, I mean quite literally the perfect company to partner with. Why? Because I've been using Bespoke Post on my own for well over a year before they ever even knew this channel existed, and it's fantastic. It's funny because the very specific sponsorship brief requires that you use some of the products, which they send you for that reason, but I've effectively been using their products since last year for a multitude of reasons, because the monthly box that they send is, in fact, excellent. Bespoke Post is a monthly membership club delivering a box of top-shelf goods from excellent under-the-radar brands. Most of what they send comes from small brands, many of which are based in the United States. It's free to join, you can cancel anytime or skip a month whenever you feel like. Here's an example box I got from them called Terra, which contains a knife trowel made by Bare Bones based in Salt Lake City. Every month, they introduce you to new options from outdoor gear to barware, kitchen goods, clothing, even live oysters. Boxes contain about $70 worth of quality goods sent to you for just a fraction of that price, and you can preview your box before it's shipped every month, opting to keep it, swap it, or skip it. I myself have received well over a dozen of these independent from the sponsorship, and it's very hard to choose a favorite. Just today, I actually used the Terra knife to pull this giant bull thistle out of my yard, and it's not the first time. With one of the boxes from a while ago, I scrimshawed my logo into a bone-handled knife. How cool is that? Yet another package had a wallet and a flask that I got quite a bit of usage out of, and the list goes on because their list of boxes is enormous and their product quality is excellent. To get 20% off your first box, click the link down below in the description and enter code UEG20 at checkout, or go to bespokepost.com/UEG20. Again, link down below in the description, checkout code UEG20 to get 20% off your first box today. Big thank you to them for sponsoring the channel. Candy Crush. For some, it's not even a video game that qualifies as anything other than a joke, but when tens of millions of people play the game daily around the world, it certainly qualifies as something, and serves as a pretty good example of how industry psychology has changed. Now, side note here, Candy Crush was originally published by King Digital, which was acquired by Activision Blizzard in 2015. That's important because Activision Blizzard is a main stage culprit in the world of manipulating their player base, but for right now, we will stay focused on Candy Crush alone. I probably don't need to even say this, but Candy Crush is a basic match 3 puzzle game that has you destroying little blocks of candy in order to complete levels. It's innocent, fun, and colorful, but what if I told you that Candy Crush has more in common with a slot machine than it does with any other existing entertainment product in the world? That assertion probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense on its face, so let me explain here. Slot machines are predicated on the idea of winning money, which Candy Crush is not, but both of these games are built around the illusion of control. For slot machines, sometimes you get to press a button and stop the wheels, or choose how many lines to play or how much to bet per line, with a wide range of other trivial selections that make it seem like you are somehow in control of the outcome, at least moderately. In reality, you have no control over the outcome whatsoever, and simply engage with a randomized computer terminal that will, on average, spit out less money than users put in. Illusion of control is a well-documented phenomenon in pathological gamblers. It's not very well hidden in standard slot machines, but for Candy Crush, it is extremely well hidden. Most players will assume that their decisions matter. You, the player, choose which bricks to move, and can easily construct a series of sequential matches that give you, say, a power-up or a bonus. But when levels are constructed to require maybe 30 different blocks be destroyed, some of them multiple times, like jellies or candy canes or these things that you have to hit multiple times before they disappear, your individual decisions need to be made within an overarching reality. That reality? The candies you receive, all of them, when they come in from above the screen, are randomized. While Candy Crush does an incredible job of tricking its players into believing that their actions matter, the reality is that you are subjected to a computer program determining which colors come next, and very often no decision that you make, period, can result in a win. Of course, there is a degree of flexibility here where perhaps you had one move that would have destroyed more blocks and resulted in a win, but you simply missed it. However, the sad reality is that very often, nothing you did, could have done, or will do results in a win, because the blocks being dispersed to you from the top down over the course of the level simply do not allow for a series of moves that would fulfill the level's win condition. That right there is the illusion of control that slot machines use, with incredible efficacy I might add, to manipulate and retain players, but it gets worse. In tandem to this illusion is a phenomenon called near misses, where a slot machine will display, let's say, 4 out of 5 jackpot markers, while the 5th row is a 0. This is called a near miss because just one more winning marker would supposedly have paid out big. However, the only measurable effect of this, given that it does not increase the likelihood of winning on future spins, that's just not a statistical reality, is that gamblers are much more likely to continue playing after near misses. The dopamine hit from winning on a slot machine pull is a massive part of its addictive nature. Sure, money is a root cause behind why that dopamine hit can be so powerful for some, but a player's reaction to near misses will continually reinforce that initial behavior through psychological and chemical payouts in the brain. And Candy Crush, according to research from the Journal of Gambling Studies, has the exact same properties and effects. Near misses in Candy Crush, which occur quite frequently, are when you have maybe 2 more jellies to destroy and no more moves. You almost won, but you didn't, and you've tried this level, let's say, 4 times already. What is the impact? A cycle of reinforced addiction built on the dopamine rush of near misses after you engage with a system built on the illusion of control, aka a slot machine without the money. You can pay more money to access the dopamine hit more frequently through power-ups and additional lives, but Candy Crush is a slot machine that doesn't even pay its players, while using all of the same addictive tactics to hook them when compared to standard slots. Whether or not you consider Candy Crush, with something like 93 million daily active players, to be indicative of the wider gaming industry is up to you, but the fact remains, it is built to be as predatory as possible, using the very same tactics as a Vegas casino. How about another example? Match 3 puzzle games are not necessarily indicative of video games for most people that watch this channel, so let's move on to a pair of major publishers. Activision Blizzard, the owners of Candy Crush as well, and Electronic Arts. Activision Blizzard is a perfect example for a host of reasons, but one of those reasons is a patent they hold for a system that, quote, drives microtransactions in multiplayer video games. The system may include a microtransaction arrange matches to influence game-related purchases. For example, the system may match a more expert/marquee player with a junior player to encourage the junior player to make game-related purchases of items possessed/used by the marquee player. A junior player may wish to emulate the marquee player by obtaining weapons or other items used by the marquee player. End quote. That was a lot, I know, so in simple terms, that means that they will put a novice or a newbie versus an expert so that the novice will buy in-game purchases in order to be able to compete, because the expert is obviously better or has spent more money. That is about as direct as you could possibly be, and indicates that they are perfectly fine with totally destroying the concept of a level playing field in order to sell more in-game items. Still, another reason would be Diablo Immortal. The Diablo franchise is a long-cherished video game property developed by Blizzard, under the banner of Activision Publishing. And yet, instead of prioritizing what people really want, the decision was made to reformat the game for mobile devices. Josh Strafe Hayes has an incredible video on Diablo Immortal, I'll link it down below in the description, but the gist of it is that players would need to spend tens of thousands of dollars to obtain even just some of the legendary gear. That kind of monetization simply didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago. The idea that a game would have this kind of paywall to access appealing content was just frankly unheard of in 2010 or even 2005, but Diablo Immortal is not alone, and certainly not the first culprit. Electronic Arts, another example famously used by everyone demonstrating how far modern gaming has fallen, also holds a patent, this one aimed at dynamic difficulty. Quote, "Embodiments of systems presented herein may perform automatic granular difficulty adjustment. In some embodiments, the difficulty adjustment is undetectable by a user. Further, embodiments of systems disclosed herein can review historical user activity data with respect to one or more video games to generate a game retention prediction model that predicts an indication of an expected duration of gameplay." End quote. The language in these patents is always way overly technical, but simplified, this patent outlines a system where EA can adjust how player characters perform in-game without player knowledge, to augment speed, aiming, jumping, anything really, and maximize player retention by, once again, destroying the concept of a level playing field. They swear up and down that this is not being used in competitive games, but the mere existence of a system like that, which will also take into consideration how much money you have spent as it manipulates the game's functionality behind the scenes, multiple sections pertain to that directly, the mere existence of this kind of system is deeply troubling. Still, there's more to discuss with EA and more even specifically inside FIFA. It turns out that Ultimate Team icons, for those familiar with FIFA, that's basically like highly sought after players, some of them anyway, are so rare, impactful, and sought after, with limited availability, that an EA employee was facilitating a black market cash economy. Well, according to speculative reports, EA says that they investigated and then I never really heard anything else about it, but from everything that we can see, it highly seems to be that an EA employee was facilitating a black market cash economy to sell in-game items, in this case players, to users. That kind of economy simply does not and cannot exist inside of traditional video game products, because traditional video game products with just a price tag and then you get the game are not designed to be an addictive, never-ending money pit. The psychology of video games on a AAA level has changed massively over the past 2 decades. It's not every publisher. Companies like Nintendo still come to mind as an example where the old ways have not yet fully died, but enough major franchises have gone down this route to create an air of uncertainty about which one will fall next. As the mechanical foundation of gaming changes, morphing and twisting into something more akin to slot machines or traditional gambling than hobby entertainment, there is a noticeable lapse in relative enforcement. Last example, which I didn't even think to include till almost halfway through the script, but yeah, it's a pretty good one. According to Regulation 14.040 of the Nevada Gaming Control Board, quote, "All gaming devices must theoretically pay out a mathematically demonstrable percentage of all amounts wagered, which must not be less than 75% for each wager available for play on the device. B. Determine game outcomes solely by the application of chance, the skill of the player, or a combination of the skill of the player and chance, display in an accurate and non-misleading manner the rules of play, the amount required to wager on the game or series of games in a gaming session, the amount to be paid on winning wagers, any rake-off percentage or any fee charged to play the game or series of games in a gaming session, any monetary wagering limits for games representative of live gambling games, the total amount wagered by the player, the game outcome, and such additional information sufficient for the player to reasonably understand the game outcome." End quote. That was a lot, I know. That kind of rambled on, but bear with me, because as demonstrated by researcher Jeremy Ray, CSGO, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, a massively popular video game on Steam, in its loot crates, which is a form of gambling, definitively tied to real-world cash through the Steam marketplace itself and third-party exchange platforms as well, has an RTP, return to player, that is effectively half of the mandatory minimums in practically every single part of the world. Basically, video games, at the very least a hefty chunk of video games, have adopted predatory psychological manipulation tactics and gambling infrastructure without any of the comparable regulation that exists elsewhere. And in fact, if you compare them directly to like the Las Vegas Strip, they're worse. It's not a new concept, but having recently had a bit of a reason to explore the reality behind Candy Crush, it felt like a topic worth discussing and once again reiterating. In essence, be extremely aware of what your children are doing online and also what they're doing in video games. And for certain examples of those games, understand that addictive personality types are especially vulnerable here, because many games are now designed in a very deliberate way so as to directly prey on those psychological vulnerabilities. For a brief period of time in the aftermath of Electronic Arts mutilating their Star Wars license with Battlefront 2, we did have regulation in the works around the globe, at least in a lot of different countries and different legislatures, but that wave has since died down dramatically, and it's unclear what it would take to rekindle the fire. For me, it's a topic I've cared about since basically the channel was founded, but so far there is very little that has been done or even can be done to reverse or stop the trend. It's kind of a losing battle at this stage. It just keeps happening and we get to watch it. But yeah, as a result, I rant and I rave, but that's about it. If you want to support, please check out the links down below. Obviously, merchandise, again, only 6 days left. The video sponsor, or locals and Patreon, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.